Hi, you might be wondering, well, what can I build for Ember? There is no such guide on the online, of course. But what you couldn't maybe find on videos is stuff that might bore you as others are explaining. So today I will try to give you another Ember guide where I am explaining Ember, hopefully in a way where it appeals more for you. Ember is one of the characters that the game will just give it to you so that you get to try out some mechanics of the reactions. But obviously, since she's a free character and kind of developers want you to try out new characters, she is a little bit on the weaker side compared to the other characters. So Ember is a bow character. A bow character means that when you're left clicking, she will auto attack 5 times. These all have their own unique animations. Ember also has a charge attack mode, which allows you to charge your bow, and after a little bit of charge time, you can throw your arrow while aiming towards a target. And this arrow will only hit one target, and after it hits, it will, dissipate and deal damage. Ember summons a bunny with her E ability, which dances, and this dance is so cute that it will actually attract enemies to it instead of looking at you. Obviously, after some time, the dancing bunny, after attracting the enemies, will explode, in theory. Overall, because the bunny is kind of dancing, it's free to move, which means if an enemy hits your bunny, well, it might just fly all over the place. Also, the bunny is a little bit too small. I guess that's why it doesn't pounce enemies from distance most of the time. And Ember's Burst allows you to throw a lot of little tiny arrows. And they are so tiny that they do forget to do damage. But hey, if you build it again, it does some damage. And most of the time, you can see an Ember doing relatively decent damage. But overall, what this burst is mostly used is not its damage on its own. It is applying a lot of pyro. Ember's first passive talent allows her to gain 10% crit rate for only her burst and increases her range. Ember's second passive talent allows her to gain 15% additional attack, which if you throw a charge shot, but you do not need to fully charge this shot to gain it. And Ember's normal passive talent allows you to lose less stamina by around 20% while gliding. For Ember's constellations, it is actually one of the rarest constellations to get in the game. Even though she is a 4-star, she almost never has a banner, which means that, well, you either need to buy her constellations from the shop or you need to get unlucky to get an Amber constellations from your random chance of getting a constellation of a random 4-star that is not a weapon. But assuming if you do get her constellations, her C1 allows you to throw the additional arrow, which does 20% extra damage of her initial arrow. This also applies pyro. Her constellation 2 allows you to manually explode your bunnies. So if you are sick of your bunny being tossed around all over the place and not generating energy, you can actually kind of take care of the bunny, making it explode in the moment you do want. In order to do that, you need to shoot the foot of the bunny with your charge shot, which does take time, but if you do see it as your charge shot does now area damage, plus the bunny explodes at the moment that you do exactly want it to do, it's nice. It's not a bad one. It's not a crazy one. Her C3 and C5 increases her talent levels, so I'm not gonna add too much on that. If you do need those talents for your build, it does obviously increases your damage. If you don't need those talents, like in a Persian team, well, they do nothing. Her C4 allows you to have +1 bunny, which can allow you to nuke things down a lot faster. Specifically for the melt Ember, you kind of want this constellation to be present because it does make a lot of front heavy nukes, which allows you to clear waves before the enemies even get to move or before you run out of certain buffs, which can be very impactful because of the front heavy loaded damage it allows you to do. Her C6 is not a crazy C6. Yes, it does give 15% attack, but it is not a huge boost, but still better than nothing and will increase your character damage overall and for your party. And the movement speed mostly doesn't come into play unless you sometimes barely manage to run outside of a skill because of the additional move speed you just got. So you might be wondering, well, if these are the talents, what am I gonna do with these talents? The thing is, with Amber, actually, you kinda need all of her talents based on your playstyle. If you are planning to throw a lot of charge shots with Amber in order to melt your bow shots, you might wanna level up your normal attacks so that your charge attacks also gets increased in the same multiplier. If you wanna just constantly spam burst with her burst spam ability, obviously you wanna increase the burst. If you wanna throw her in a melt team where you're detonating your own bunnies, you obviously want to level up your E so your damage increases. Since I cannot directly tell you which talent to increase first, obviously we need to talk about what kind of Amber you might want to play. There are 3 Ambers that are commonly used, and these are pretty good according to the teams or situations. It can be even actually very much strong and might be your choice of team in the Abyss. First, starting off, obviously the most simple one is burst support. What burst support Ember does overall is you throw her bunny and you press her burst and you leave the field. You can still cast Ember burst and do a lot of damage and buff the team. How do you do that? There are multiple choices. Your artifact options for this team is gonna be Noblesse Oblige, because it will give Ember some burst damage, and also it will increase your Embers and your party members' attack by 20% for 12 seconds. Since you're buffing the entire team, specifically if everybody in your team can benefit from this buff, or if you are hyper buffing a character, even the little 5, 10, 20% increases could affect the damage numbers a lot. So Noblesse Oblige is a pretty nice artifact for bursts Ember. Other than Noblesse Oblige, you can also use Emblem of Severed Fates. Since you are gonna be needing a lot of energy recharge for your Ember, Emblem of Severed Fate will turn into a lot of burst damage. For the values, you're gonna see some values on the chart down below. These charts are only for references, so test it yourself. For burst support artifacts, you do wanna aim for energy recharge, pyro damage bonus, and crit rate or damage based on your current values. And as substats, obviously you do still want a lot of crit rate and damage. If you cannot get it, you would enjoy some attack percentage as well. And if you are not reaching your set goal energy recharge rolls also good. For weapon options, I'm gonna give you the main idea what you will need. What you will need is energy recharge weapons that are most commonly will be visible are Favonius Warbow, since this bow will be given to you for free by the game, and you can get it in the future from wishes. But if you have the elegy, well, you can use it. It's a pretty strong weapon. And since you are going for this burst support cycle, obviously your main priority will be increasing your burst talent first, and then you can increase your E as much as you want. It will add up some damage, but it's not that important. But I recommend you to increase it. And you might just abandon your normal attacks because most of the time you're not going to be using it. Moving on to the Melt Ember. If you do like the Ember and you want to see her on the field, and if you want to see her do a lot of damage as a number, you can just run her with a Melt team. What does Melt Ember do help you with is that you can trigger Melt reaction by most of the time triggering the Baron Bunny by shooting at its feet. However, for this playstyle, you do need C2 Ember, And at C4 Ember, you will get additional bunny as well, which does help a lot. But if you don't want to bother with that, you can still throw some charge shots. With certain teammates applying fast enough cryo, you should be able to melt all of your charge attacks, which will help you do some damage. But keep in mind, this playstyle won't net you crazy value. If you are going for this playstyle, you do have multiple artifact options as well, since you do want some attack, some charge attack damage, and some melt reaction damage, which mostly comes from increasing your elemental mastery or specific artifact set bonuses. For artifacts, you're gonna want to have either Wanderer's Troop, or you can use Shimenawas as both 4 pieces, or of course you can use Crimson Witch of Flames, which will also increase overall your bunny and burst damage as well. For Melt Ember, you do want to have some elemental mastery and some damage. Based on what you can buff and what you cannot buff, you can pick between elemental mastery or attack percentage sandpiece. Obviously, you do want still a pyro goblet, and you do want crit rate or damage headpiece based on what your values are. For weapons, obviously you could use almost any weapon, because what you do need is just damage, and most bows just do give damage. But what does one up just a little bit, tiny bit over the others as a free-to-play is the new bow you can craft from the Dendro region, King's Squire. This bow gives you attack and gives you some nice elemental mastery, allowing you to do way much higher damage with your melts. Other than that, obviously you can use any of the 5-star weapons you have. Almost all of them will give you a lot of damage, except the Elegy. For talents, well, surprisingly enough, you do need to level up your normal attacks, allowing you to do way much more higher charge shot damage. And also you do want to increase your Baron Bunny, because you will be exploding that bunny quite a lot, and it will be probably doing quite a lot of damage. Since it does area damage, it does affect a lot of damage. And by a lot, I mean like it does some damage. And if you do want to increase, you can also increase your burst. It will not melt too much, but since you're building a lot of damage, you will end up having some decent damage numbers from your burst as well. But in comparison to most other abilities, you can kinda neglect, yet still advise to level on the burst. The final playstyle is gonna be the new one that comes with the Dendro. If you wanna hop on the Dendro train, obviously because the Dendro reactions are quite powerful, even Ember can benefit from them. How do you do that is, obviously you just generate a Dendro core. As you generate a Dendro core, now any pyro unit could hit these Dendro cores to create an explosion that does high area damage. What these do allow you to do is create a lot of Dendro cores and explode them quite fast. What is good about Ember's situation, however, is that you can actually have a little minigame of shoot those little cores. As you explode one of the cores with Ember, it will explode the other cores as well, because the core, when interacts with the pyro, does pyro damage. And the pyro damage AoE does affect the other cores, and all of the cores explode at the same time, allowing your Ember elemental mastery to be triggered on all of the cores. For this playstyle, actually it is still possible to do, but it is highly advised to use the new artifact, Flower of the Lost Sand. This artifact set allows you to gain some elemental mastery, of course, but also it does increases your burgeon damage. And you might say, well, this number looks cool, but it doesn't look insane. Actually, yeah, you're kinda right. The burgeon damage is quite easy to increase with some elemental mastery. But one thing to keep in mind, that as you have higher and higher elemental mastery, you start to gain less and less percentage increases for your reaction damage. But what this artifact set does allow you to do is give you a lot of extra damage which does not get diminished by your elemental mastery value being too high. That does play for Virgin playstyle. And this artifact set building is quite simple. You just want elemental mastery, and also you do want some elemental mastery. And that's it. You just want elemental mastery. Keep in mind though, elemental mastery artifacts do not drop as often, but also, well, if you do drop one of them, it's good enough. You can just run it without caring about what other substats you do have under the artifact, allowing you to have very easy time. For this playstyle, as a weapon, well, guess what you need? Elemental mastery. If you look at the weapons, you can find some weapons that give you elemental mastery. One of them is the stringless. Stringless is a very strong and nice bow. It will increase your E and burst damage, but in this build, it wouldn't affect as much. What we are actually looking for is the elemental mastery stat it gives, which is quite high enough. Not insane, but good enough. However, if you're saying that I am not lucky with the stringless, you can also use the new weapon, King's Squire. This weapon does not grant you elemental mastery directly, but after you cast your elemental skill or burst, the weapon gives you some elemental mastery for 12 seconds. It has 20 seconds cooldown, so you will have 8 seconds of no buff time, which you can obviously swap to your other characters, cast their abilities within the meantime, allowing you to gain almost full benefit from the weapon.